Hello, I hope everyone's doing well. Welcome to part of my kitchen. I just thought I would sit on the floor because for some reason that's what I wanted to do today. So, yeah, what I wanted to actually talk about today was adultery and divorce. So, I just wanted to go more in depth with it. And like I said, I'm here basically to show you how mother or the true God would think, but also Jesus as well. And yes, I do have qualifications to speak on their behalf. Okay, for all of the ones who do watch my videos who are just watching them to pick on me. All right, so what I want to do first off is in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17, which I did read before. Okay, because this is what I also get is that I am coming here misleading people and changing the laws that are in the Bible. Now, listen here in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. This is what Jesus said. Do not think that I came to destroy the law. Now, here it's a singular law, not laws, okay? Or the prophets. He's speaking about the true prophets, not the ones that, were on the rebel God side. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. So Jesus actually came to fulfill the law. And remember what I said, that law was the original law of love. So now, what he did is he also went into different things here, what love would be and would not be, versus what these laws passed down from the rebel God through men would entail. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to Matthew chapter 5 and I'm going to read verses 27 and 28. There it says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Now that's one thing Jesus said. And I'll explain all of this in a little because there's other things he said as well that you have to take in reference to everything. Now, I'm also going to go to Matthew chapter 19 and verse 7 through 11. Okay. And there it says, "They said to him, 'Why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce and to put her away?' He said to them, 'Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning, it was not so.'" Now remember, Jesus is saying this. From the beginning, it was not so. Because there was no such thing as like legally binding marriages that were controlled by the political system or religions. So in verse 9, "I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery, and whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery." His disciples said to him, "If such is the case of the man with his wife, it is better not to marry." But he said to them, "All cannot accept this saying, but only those to whom it has been given, or only those who have that knowledge within themselves to understand exactly what Jesus was saying." So basically, I'm going to break this down. During this time period, but you already know this, the women had no rights. The men controlled everything, including the women, and they dismissed them as they pleased in order to obtain a different woman, hence divorce. So Jesus was literally saying these things to protect the women, Now, if you haven't figured out by now, Jesus was always looking out for women and protecting them. And this, once again, was Jesus protecting women because he realized that their rights did not even exist. The men literally did whatever they wanted with them, however they wanted with them. So a divorce was very easy to get. And so in Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 and 28, it was to protect the woman. Once again, in Matthew 19, chapter 7 through 11, Jesus said these things to protect the woman because what the men of this time period were doing, and even the ones who were in control and were supposed to be shepherding these, were allowing these things to take place, which was not loving for women. It was not an act of love. So these laws were made to protect women. Also, I'm going to go to Matthew chapter 5 and in verse 31. Furthermore, it has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that whoever divorces his wife for any reason except sexual immorality causes her to commit adultery. And whoever marries a woman who is divorced commits adultery. So once again, here it's basically saying that these men were doing things that were disrespecting the woman and actually making the woman become sinful by them putting her in this situation. This is what Jesus was talking about. It wasn't that he was saying, oh, I approve of you committing adultery. I approve. Well, what he was saying in the Bible was to protect women, not to judge them harshly. He was actually judging the men for their actions toward women. Okay, once again, this is not just my words. This is actually how he would think and how the true God would think. One thing I want to mention is humanity in general has been placed in situations and circumstances that are not natural. They go completely against how you were intended to live on this planet. This is also why Jesus continually said, do not judge, because we understand the situation thoroughly. But from a human standpoint, you could never understand the situation, which is why you should not judge. Okay, so in John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, and this is the scriptures that the New World Translation leaves out, where Jesus basically came to the defense of a woman who was accused of adultery. And he actually protected her, stayed there until the accusers left. Now, if Jesus was judging people who committed fornication or adultery, why would he stand by this woman who supposedly, according to the Bible and the law of Moses, was a sinner? Why would he do this? Another thing, in John chapter 4 and verse 16, and this was that Samaritan woman by the well. Okay? So basically, most people know this story. Jesus approached this woman, but I'll read it just to refresh everyone's memory. So I'm going to read John chapter 4, 16 through 19. And here it says, Jesus said to her, go, call your husband and come here. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said to her, you have well said, I have no husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you now have is not your husband. In that you spoke truly. So, just from these verses, number 1, Jesus was conversing with a woman, which wasn't done then. If Jesus was judging people harshly and as sinners. Why would he even be speaking to this woman in the first place when he knew her situation? She wasn't married, so she was a fornicator according to the law of Moses and biblical standards. And she also had 5 husbands. 5. So that means she would have had to have a divorce many times, but yet Jesus was still interacting with her lovingly. Why? Because she lovingly offered him water when he had a need. She did not think so much about the situation or anything else. She showed love. Period. Now, it's interesting also in verse 29. The woman actually went out and preached on Jesus' behalf. This so-called woman who would, under most people's thinking, be a detestable sinner. But he literally told her about who he was, and she went off. In 28, the woman then left her water pot, went her way into the city, and said to the men, "Come, see a man who told me all things that I ever did. Could this be the Christ?" Then they went out of the city and came to him. So this sinful woman actually went out and preached about Jesus and who he was, and actually brought disciples to him. So in effect, Jesus used who most religions would qualify as a gross sinner to preach about him. And it's also something to note that in verse 26, now Jesus didn't do this often. He didn't identify himself to people outright. But in 26, he said to her, when she said, in 25, "I know that the Messiah is coming, who is called Christ." He said to her, "I who speak to you am he." He outright identified himself to this supposed gross sinner. Now, for all of you who think Jesus is going to come and judge people harshly for their mistakes, their past sins, everything, and this is who he is, and that's love, you are grossly mistaken. Actually, the ones who would follow Christ will be the ones that society, under the direction of this rebel God, deems as unworthy of salvation. And many of these people are actually the chosen ones, the 144,000, that you yourself, not everyone, but those are judging harshly. These are the ones who, if you look at them, have tattoos, they're rappers, they lead lifestyles that most people would frown upon, and you are judging them, the same ones that are going to actually be helping Christ side by side. And this is exactly why in Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 through 23, Jesus said, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, 'Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name?'" And notice in verse 23, "And then I will declare to them, 'I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness.'" These same people who are so-called disciples of Christ, who have called themselves anointed, but then slander and treat the very ones who truly are anointed badly, demean them, harass them, lie on them, slander them, try and break them down are the very ones that Jesus and Christ are going to say, I never knew you. Get out of here. But you're going to sit there and say, no, I followed Christ. I lived by his teachings. No, you didn't, because you didn't live by the teaching of love. That's it in a nutshell. So once again, those who commit adultery go by the law of love. It is not loving to mislead your spouse, who you have a legal agreement with, that you're faithful to them. It's not right. However, once you know it's not right and you stop it, you are not held accountable for your past. You're not. And anyone who wants to tell you so is not following the law of love and is judging, which is exactly what Jesus and Christ said not to do. Same thing with fornication. These examples I just gave you in the Bible, they're there. If you have someone and you are sneaking out on them and continually doing it even though you know it's not right and misleading them, that is not living by the law of love. If you are using another person for your own selfish desires, that is not love. Love does not equal lust. So if you realize this, you know, turn away from the behavior and do better. If you're in a relationship that is loveless, don't torture yourself. Leave. That would be the loving thing to do for your partner as well as yourself. That is what the true God wants. Because from the beginning, she wanted everyone to be free. Free to love the way they wanted to love. That's it. So, just like I said before, do not judge anyone for their past. Show love. That's it. Let God and the ones who truly can judge do the judging. It's not your job. It's not. Okay, that's it for today. I love you all. I'm sending you my peace. And to all those who really are starting to grasp onto the truth and knowledge, and you're going to get all this backlash from people who are literally working for the other team, keep your head up high, because you're truly walking in the way of God and the Christ. And the universe will bless you. Trust me. Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.